Hi everyone. Today we will try to understand machine learning through just 10 lines of code, and we will do this by classifying handwritten digits. Now, machine learning is a complex topic, but it can be broken down into mainly 3 steps. Firstly, we have to find some data on which to do machine learning. Then we have to create an AI model and make it learn from the data. And finally, we have to evaluate how well our model has learned. To do this, we will be using a Python library called Keras, which simplifies machine learning and the creation of neural networks to just a few lines of code, which is why it's perfect for beginners. There's a link to the code in the description, which has an even more detailed explanation, and you can run it online without installing anything on your computer. Now let's get started with the first section, which is finding the data on which we will train. So our main goal today is to take pictures of handwritten digits and identify which digit is inside the picture. If we want to teach a machine to do this by itself, we need to teach it by showing thousands of examples. Each example will contain an input image as well as what the ideal output should be. We will be teaching our model using 60,000 examples, which is called the training dataset, and then later on we'll be testing how well our model has learned using 10,000 examples called the testing dataset. Now if we take a look at the code, we first import some libraries such as Keras, which is for machine learning, matplotlib, which is for plotting the images, and numpy, which is for extracting the output from our model. Keras also provides us with the mnist dataset, which contains the handwritten images. So we extract the training inputs and outputs as well as the testing inputs and outputs. Now we can print out a few examples to see the images as well as their labels. Something to keep in mind is that while we see these pictures, to the computer it's just a 2D list of numbers as shown here. Now that we know what our data looks like, we can take a look at creating our AI model and training it. We will be using neural networks which are modeled after the human brain and are very good at machine learning tasks. They consist of neurons which can take multiple inputs, multiply them with some weights, and give an output. These weights are variables and are what change as the model learns on data in order to give the correct output. Now a single neuron isn't very powerful, so we can create a column of them called a layer of neurons. An example is the input layer, which is the data fed to our model. We will be flattening each of our 28 by 28 pixel images to get an input layer with 784 neurons. At the other side is the output layer, which gives the output of our model. We will have 10 neurons in ours, each signifying the probability that the input image contains a specific number from 0 to 9. And then there are the hidden layers. These are layers of neurons in the middle which pass messages from the previous layer to the next. They're responsible for figuring out patterns in the data, which means the more the hidden layers you have, the better your model will usually work. Going to the code, we first define a sequential Keras model since a neural network is basically a sequence of layers. We flatten our input image, then we have 2 hidden layers with 200 neurons each, and then an output layer with 10 neurons. Now that our model is made, we also have to configure how to train it. First, we choose the optimizer, which basically decides how much to change the weights of a neuron when a wrong answer is seen. Then we choose the loss function, which is the quantity our model tries to minimize as it learns. This usually signifies how wrong our output is and goes down as the model trains. And finally, we define any metrics which we want to keep track of as we train, such as accuracy. And now that we've created our model, we just tell it to train on our training dataset and see how the accuracy increases over time. Training works by taking an input, multiplying it by the weights in each neuron, and then passing it to the next layer. At the end, we get the values at the output. We also know what the correct output should be and see that our model gave the wrong answer. So we pass messages backwards telling the neurons to change their weights a little bit so that we can learn from our mistake. We keep on doing this thousands of times until each neuron has the ideal weight to give the correct answer most of the times. And we see that the accuracy increases over time as we train our model. Now that the training is done, we need to see how well the model learned. Even though it had around a 96% accuracy on the training dataset, it doesn't mean that the model learned very well. It could have just memorized the images instead of actually learning how to identify the patterns. This is why we always use a testing dataset to check the accuracy of a model. And if we evaluate the model on the testing dataset, we still get a very nice accuracy of 95%, which shows that the model has learned pretty well. We can also now pass in some images to our model and see how well it predicts them. And the results seem pretty good. So congrats, you have successfully created your first neural network and taught it how to identify handwritten digits in images using machine learning. If you found this video helpful, do subscribe for more lessons like this.